The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, the space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
We have a question from Laura from Kingston, Ontario. I've been there. Kingston is really lovely. Ontario, Canada, and Laura writes, the reporting regarding the U.S. war in Iran is confusing. Trump says it's pretty much been won. Iran's military capabilities are destroyed and pretty much mission accomplished. Yet Hegseth says it's just the beginning. We should note that Trump said that it could be the beginning or the end, a very incoherent statement. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz is down to a crawl as oil prices continue to rise. This past week, Trump asked NATO allies and even China to send ships to secure the strait. Then, when he didn't get the response he was expecting or wanted, he demanded. It doesn't seem like that worked either. I guess I'm wondering if all is well, and what does the U.S. need with the Navy support of other countries? Good question. Again, we are seeing chaos with no clear answers. But my question is about the reaction from the rest of the world. I know you have all said in the past that Trump's actions were isolating the U.S. Is this rejection of Trump's request a first sign of that? Trump said that if NATO didn't help, it might be bad for the organization. What does that really mean? Oil is important for the entire world, and the closing of the Strait of Hormuz is a real problem. One that the U.S. should have recognized before it started this war. Absolutely. Do you think the rest of the world should send help? No, I personally don't. And lastly, if Trump pulls out without securing the strait and Israel keeps fighting, and because of that, the strait stays closed, what do you think this will mean for Israel's standing in the world? I do have one point, Laura. To my understanding, Europe is moving away from reliance on oil and gas. They're getting at least some of their liquefied natural gas now from Norway. Canada is considering becoming a member of the EU, and France was announcing that they would actually consider that and welcome it, in which case, Canada certainly has a lot of tar sands oil. But Europe is really moving toward renewables so that it will not be, and they have been moving toward renewables since Putin invaded Ukraine. So Europe then would not be dependent on the strait at all. And Iran is allowing certain ships and escorting certain ships like those from China, and some from India too, I understand, to go through. It's just allies or former allies or buddies of the United States and U.S. ships are not getting through. And my feeling, although I don't know for sure, of course, is that even if the U.S. stops fighting, the strait will continue to be closed to U.S. bound tankers. I think the Iranians are really, really furious, and they will continue to punish the United States. But that's just my opinion. And no, I don't think anybody else should help. And I know that I believe both Mark and Scott disagree with me. But Trump has been encouraged and supported and babied along by people in the United States, like the Republican Congress, and allowed to get whatever he wanted. And there have never been consequences for him. And now there are consequences, and so be it. And I know that we're all having to suffer, and we will continue to suffer. And Europe needs to go its own way, and so does Canada. And I know that we'll all suffer, including me. Please go ahead, Mark and Scott.
Yeah, Mark.
Okay. All right. So let me take the first part, the question about Trump's, asking for help. I love the German response. The Germans are so good at this kind of stuff. The German defense minister and foreign minister basically said, wait a minute, the United States is such a powerful Navy. What do they need a few of our frigates for? I mean, what are we going to do? I mean, that's such a practically German response to things. Um, Trump's saying, well, if you don't help me, it's bad for NATO. NATO is not going to be what it was before. So I think we better get used to that idea. And I think that's a good thing, to be perfectly honest, because I think they've relied on the United States for a very, very long time. And the fact is that, now we're beginning to see a transition. And there's always going to be a transition when something changes. It's like, Brooklyn bringing up about we're going to be looking at, Europe is looking at renewable energy. Unless there's a disruption in the old way, people really aren't motivated to look for different solutions. The environmental movement, yeah, it's very, very important, but it's only until you can't get gas to run your combustion engines that you say, hey, maybe we ought to do something about this. And that's something that happens, by necessity, and necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that's the same thing with NATO. NATO was fine until you had Trump, and then we had this disruption to NATO. And Brooklyn's correct. Everybody seemed to bend over backwards to please baby Jesus, baby orange Jesus, but now they're basically saying there was no pleasing them. We're done with this crap. And so, yeah, it's NATO is going to change. What we see today is what was NATO during, like, say, Reagan and Bush and all the previous presidents. I think that's gonna change, and maybe it's about time that it did. Maybe it's about time that NATO, just like our energy priorities, maybe it's time that they did change. And Trump's basically given us the necessity. Same that we think could be said about Canada. Canada was always, the reliable, next door neighbor, the reliable little brother that relied on us quite a bit. And then they found out that, they could do just fine by not relying on us. And again, this is the transition that I think is important when we start looking at all these different systems that we grew up with. And I don't know how old you are, Laura, but these are systems that we've grown up with for 60 years. And the fact is that they do evolve at some point in time. And I think the evolution is starting. Is it going to be painful? Yep. Evolution is always painful. Change is always painful. But the fact is that change in the end is exactly what's necessary. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at this.
Mark's sort of sighing is because I had my fingers up. Mark, you reminded me of something with NATO. Sorry. NATO, I don't even think has the ships to send. And plus Trump insulted NATO and insulted Europe and insulted Canada. I don't see why after that he would say, well, they really should be, meaning NATO and everyone else, because it's their territory and we'll do a lot of help. I mean, it
all right, well, let me see if I can make this easy for you.
It's rude.
He believes this because he's a moron.
Yeah, exactly.
That's number one.
And then Trump's, after they all said no, Trump is like, well, it wasn't really serious. We really didn't need their help anyway. And that's like Aesop's fable, The Fox and the Grapes. If you're familiar with that story, where the fox jumps at the grapes, and he can't reach them. And then he says to himself, well, those are really sour anyway. I really didn't want them. And of course, if you can't get something, then you just say, well, it really wasn't any good anyway. And so when everybody says no to Trump, he's like, well, I really didn't want your help anyway, but but I'm going to remember that you said no, and all the help that he supposedly gave to Ukraine and all that. I mean, it's just
Here's the other thing.
Please, besides
the sour grapes aspect of it, that's very Trump, right? this is not what NATO is for.
No.
NATO is if you're invaded, you have backup, right? We didn't get invaded. We invaded. We bombed. We're the aggressors here. And why would NATO want to jump in on that? And right now, as Brooke pointed out before, Iran is saying, hey, look, if you're on our side here or neutral, your ships can get through. It's only the enemies of our country that we're gonna shoot down or sink or set on fire or whatever. And so very clever and probably going to be decisive there because they have to get their oil, and India and China are going to move further and further away. Look, you see the way that World War I developed with alliances and people's interests and joining up with another country whose interests you think are aligned with yours, and creating a world war. It's kind of what this was beginning to remind me of, and I'll end soon before it gets really out of control, because I don't see good things happening here. We're going to continue to take out, or Israel's going to continue to take out anybody that they prop up as a leader. And, the report in the Wall Street Journal today was that Israel's got troops on the ground, that they're running around all over Iran, looking in the hiding places that they know about, and killing anybody who's in there. And they took out the defense minister yesterday, and they're going to continue to prosecute this war in their way for as long as it takes for them to get what I guess they want, which is regime change. And look, this is painful for me to say, but once this war was started, it's got to end our way. This is no longer an active war. It was a couple of weeks ago. It should not have started. There is no reason for starting it. But now that it's started, it's got to end our way. It's got to end with regime change. It's got to end with them having no capability with nuclear power or projecting power anywhere else. I still think that we're going to pay a really big price here in America for this war, and that sleeper cells that Trump says he has his eye on, but has not, for one reason or another, annihilated or decimated or captured or deported. Really, really bizarre take on that one. But I think we have long suspected that they were here, and that there was going to be some kind of consequences, whether it's cyber or whether it's terrorism or whatever asymmetrical advantage that they think they can do. And here again, we have an acting cyber director at CISA, because the week before this war started, or the day before this war started, the cyber security czar, or whatever he's called, the director of CISA, was fired or replaced or demoted or signed or whatever you want to call it, and was horrible at his job anyway. But now we have a guy who's the acting director, and it doesn't appear that he knows what he's doing either. So we're in rough shape in personnel at the top, from the top down. But throughout this administration, there are people in roles that they are unqualified for that will lead to disaster. And we're going to pay a price for that. There's little doubt in my mind. But at the same time, I hate to say this, but this war has to continue until we get what we want. And what we want is a regime that is not a theocracy, a crazy Islamic theocracy. And I'll just add, for anybody who thinks that I'm being prejudiced or anything, we need regime change here in the United States and in Israel too. Israel is moving further and further to the right. That's got to stop. And in this country, we have moved to a, I'm not even sure I would call it right or conservative. We have moved into this cult of personality that is a disaster for the country.
If you watch the news, not one single military expert, be they from the United States or be they from other countries, and this is a point that Laura brings up, the Strait of Hormuz was going to be a real problem, and everybody knew that going in. But when you've got incompetence running an operation, like the incompetence that we've got going on, they don't think of that. That's not something. That's not a. That important point was not something that they thought of. And the only thing I'm going to disagree with Scott on is I don't think this ends the way we want it to. I think what's going to basically happen is Trump's going to see, no, he's not going to get any support. This is absolutely, killing his popularity. Although he may not care about that, I don't know. But he seems so thin-skinned. It's almost hard to imagine that he doesn't care about it. And it's just too hard. I mean, this is one of those things where, and again, it's just too hard to get exactly what we want. And now you've got the Israelis, and in some ways, we're kind of following what the Israelis want. And we're a little hard to figure out really what it is exactly they want. Yes, they want to get rid of the leadership. Yes, they want to get rid of the nuclear weapons. But is the way they're going about it, is it the right way? At this point in time, it's very difficult to discern because Scott has made this point numerous times before. If you want truth to go to a place to die, go to the Middle East. And what you get out of the Middle East, who knows if it's true or if it's not true. The Strait of Hormuz was a horrible oversight on our part. And I blame, all the cosplayers that are running this military operation for not having known this. I mean, even somebody that I disagree with, John Bolton, there's not too much I agree with John Bolton, but even he knows this was obvious. We've known this for years and years and years and years and years. And, so that's how we overlook that is like incomprehensible. I'll go back to the bride one.
Oh,
the Princess Bride. Incomprehensible. I mean, it really is. It's incomprehensible. And so our NATO allies, who, let's face it, Trump has insulted every single one of them, every last one of them, and he's insulted NATO, and he's insulted this, and he's insulted that, and now he's begging for help from the people he insulted, and he's basically getting, they're thumbing their nose at him. And the only way you're going to see them become involved into this is if this really begins to directly impact them. But now Iran, reports out today, is starting to get oil out through Turkey because there's other ways for them to do it. And we have to look how much of Europe's oil actually comes from Iran. And I think it's only around 10%. It's not much more than that. So, what's the incentive? Now, the Chinese, yes, the Chinese they know you don't mess with the Chinese stuff. That's all there is to it. And if you haven't figured that out, you just don't mess with their stuff. And yes, the Iranians are going to make sure the Chinese oil gets through. And that might be good for India as well. But the fact, when you've got to go to your sworn enemy, supposedly, the China, and you got to ask for their help to do something, how weak does that make you look? And I'll go back to the Germans. Listen, if this mighty American, big, strong man, powerful man, tears running down his face, sir, can't handle it, what are us poor Germans going to do? And, it's a valid point.
Well, Trump even on Air Force One, I think it was, even said to a reporter that you could make a case that we shouldn't even be there. Well, yeah, we shouldn't even be there. I don't even know what Trump is talking about now half the time. Well, more than half the time. And we're going to be more and more isolated, Laura, to get back to your point. And this may be the first very, very, very visible step of Americans being, or the United States being isolated. And I expect that this will continue. And I'm with you, Mark. Scott, yeah, I don't think that this war will end the way we want it to. And no, it never should have begun. And why Trump was saying that no expert could have predicted that the Iranians would close the Strait of Hormuz.
That's the stupidest thing I've
Really?
ever heard. That is just
Yeah.
stupid.
But I mean, so
Trump is
what's
getting
more
more and more stupid and idiotic.
Pete Hegseth says, you didn't think we thought of the Strait of Hormuz? We knew about
No.
the Strait. We knew that they were going to close it down. They've been threatening to do that for 47 years, so we knew about it. But he didn't have any plan for it. So,
Yeah.
so if you know about something and you don't do anything, that
Okay,
almost
what is
seems, right, it seems
I think-
crazier than not knowing about it at all.
The whole thing is
So, Mark, I don't know, you
a
may be
mess.
surprised to learn that China only gets 12% of its oil from Iran, but it wants that 12%. And,
That's-
and you know, so you mentioned India before, also dependent. And now you start to see different allies growing out of this, right? So China and Iran have been long-term allies and trading partners. They both share their disdain for the United States and the world order that we have created, and would love to see it crash. And it's crashing.
and we've done that.
And they're getting their way. And
Yes.
and yeah, I mean, so at some point, look, you're probably right. You're probably right that Trump is going to walk away from this thing, declare victory, strut around, say, look at what I did. And, it will all go, whoa, what a disaster. And he'll go, what a great thing. And his followers will go, what a great thing, because as they tend to do.
Yes.
Hopefully oil prices will come down. I mean, the oil companies or the gas, I don't know who it is that creates the pricing here. But man, if they have one excuse to raise
Any
the
excuse.
prices at the pump, man, do they jump on that, and they're real slow to come down again. There's nothing.
they'll
And Trump saying that when the world oil supply is clutched up, that we make money is
he means
one of
his
those
billionaire class.
right.
Well,
One of those situations that Americans really need to start thinking about, because we're not in that we people. We're not in that.
We're not. We're not.
Well,
I think
and when we look
Big
at this,
club.
when
We're not in
Biden
it.
became the president and gas prices went up 5 cents,
Yep.
the right lost their mind because they had some idea that on the Resolute desks there's a button that somebody turns to change the oil prices. And I kept saying, hey, you want to blame somebody for the 5% increase, you got to blame the oil companies, because they will find any excuse. Scott's exactly right. But now that it's gone up, I don't know about in your area, but before the war started, we were paying $2.44 a gallon here in South Carolina.
More than that here, but like 30 cents more.
Right. Right now, we're paying $3.59.
Yeah, we're paying about that, I think, last I looked.
Right. So, but all I hear out of them isn't, oh, Trump did this. Oh, Trump did this. All I hear out of them is, oh, it'll come down eventually. Okay. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's, yeah. Oh, okay. Great. So it doesn't count. But I think the real interesting part about Laura's question is the last part.
Yep.
And again, it comes to, lastly, if Trump pulls out without securing the strait and Israel keeps fighting, which I would
Yep.
expect,
Yes.
and because of
I
that,
do.
the strait stays closed. What do you think this will mean for Israel's standing in the world? Will the
Will not be
world
good.
turn? I mean, it's one thing they turn against us, and they already have, because basically Trump's done everything possible to get the world to basically say, go screw yourselves. I mean, for whatever reason, because we don't need Iranian oil. He said that. We don't need the rest of the world. He said that, while in the same breath he was asking for their help and then demanding their help. We don't need NATO. Well, we need NATO, but now I'm going to demand NATO, which it's not even NATO's function. So again, I guess the real question is, if Israel keeps this up, and I really do expect them to, I don't see them backing down. What does the world turn? I mean, like it did with Gaza. Does the world turn?
Has the world not already turned on Israel? Am I missing something?
Does this make it worse?
Yeah, it makes a really
I
bad.
mean, so how does it manifest itself to be worse than it already is? Like I said, when Israel and Gaza got started, Scott and I were sitting here. We said 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We predict again. Never listen to the Nova Society whenever we make a prediction because we are like the worst at it. 2 weeks, we said. It took 2 days. So Trump pulls out and basically says, okay, let's just open the strait because we're no longer involved. But Israel stays in this and keeps it up. Now the world is going to blame Israel for the Strait of Hormuz being closed down because they're going to forget about Trump for a while. I mean, how much worse could it get for Israel? What could be the ramifications, Scott?
I don't know. I mean, Israel's already a pariah state for most of the world, I think, anyway. So I don't know how much worse it could get. I mean, the only real big change here is this thing that happened yesterday with this guy, Joe Kent, resigning and saying that it's Israel's fault and Trump was duped, which is, really that you got to be MAGA if you're going to say something like that, right? Because Trump's Trump's an imbecile, but he's a big boy, okay? And he wears big pants. And his big pants and everything else that is inside those pants needs to be pulled up, and he needs to own this. Saying that he got duped by Israel makes him even look worse, I think. Which is one of these real contradictions that you get when you talk to MAGA people, is that, he's the most powerful man in the world. He's the greatest thinker ever. He's the best negotiator and the best deal maker, and he's getting ripped off all the time by other people and manipulated by Israel and this and that. Come on, man. You can't square that circle. There's no way that you can make that claim, but that's what the guy claimed in his resignation letter. He said, I don't like the fact that Israel did this and I'm resigning because of it. So he's putting Israel squarely on the fire here, and it's going to lead to a lot of anti-Semitism. And so we're going to have that brilliant combination of anti-Islamism and anti-Semitism in the world, especially here in the United States. And there's going to be hell to pay for it. There'll be synagogues attacked and people murdered and all kinds of stuff. But you got to own this. Trump made this decision. Plenty of presidents have been pushed over the last 40 years by Netanyahu to do this, and they've all managed to resist. Only Trump didn't resist, and the reason for that is Venezuela, probably, and the success that the military had in Venezuela, in and out real quick. He assumed that he could do that in Iran, and it's not working out very well. And he's got to own it.
But he's already looking at Cuba, saying, "Oh, it's going to be his."
Well, that's the distraction from the distraction, right?
Yeah, it's just more of a distraction. And I mean, here's my great fear with this whole situation. I think it was yesterday or the day before on Leading British Conversation. They had some American PhD on there who was a Trump supporter, was a supporter of Trump. And I'll tell you something, she was embarrassing. She was absolutely embarrassing. She claimed that Trump was not playing 4D chess; he was playing 10D chess. And and I'm thinking, oh my God! I mean, I please check this woman's credentials. Did she get her degree from What's a Ma to You, which anybody that watched Rocky and Bullwinkle would know exactly that reference, because she was a complete idiot. They also had another person on there that was a Trump supporter, who basically was looking at her going, "You're an idiot." So you've got the group of MAGA that's beginning to look at this and saying, wow, maybe this isn't such a great idea. And then, of course, you're always got those ones that are out there and it's going to, make up stuff as they go along. But here's my fear for Israel. Trump pulls out. He won't take responsibility. He will not say that he got dragged in. He's going to stick with that same old line of, well, they almost had a nuclear weapon and they almost had the ability to deliver it to the United States, which is bullshit. I mean, total absolute bullshit. Israel keeps fighting for the reasons that they're fighting. Now, some may say that they kind of line up. You want regime change, and you don't want nuclear weapons in Iran. That part does line up, but Israel has more skin in the game than we have in it. So Trump backs out, and Trump says, "Okay, I wasn't duped. Mission accomplished. We did our damage, and we're out. And Israel keeps fighting." My great fear here is that the rest of the world begins to look at Israel. And you're right, Scott. We have to have regime change in Israel, equally as much as we've got to have it here. My great fear is that the rest of the world says, you know what? Yeah, the Islamic Republic, Iran, is bad. And yeah, that has to be cleaned out. But you know what? So does Israel. And the rest of the world turns on Israel, not just in condemnation as far as diplomat is concerned, because you're right, they're becoming a pariah state. They're becoming a pariah state, and people are beginning to say, you know what, this religious ideology, this theocracy that exists, and they're now equating the Islamic Republic theocracy to Israeli theocracy. Of course, two different sides of the coin, and the fear now is that eventually some of these states are going to say, you know what, Iran shouldn't exist, neither should Israel. And they go in there and they turn, not like they've ever turned before. Ever since Israel was put there, it's been a problem. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, that's not the Israelis' fault. That's the fault of the people that put Israel where they put it. I mean, that's just a bad neighborhood. So that's like putting a pork butcher in the middle of a kosher neighborhood. Just not the thing you want to do. Well, this is what they've done. And my great fear, again, and because my wife has family there, I have family there, that Israel keeps fighting, and now the blame goes on to Israel, and they say, you know what, we just have to stop Israel from this. And of course, we all know Netanyahu won't do it because he's trying to save his own skin, trying to stay as far out of prison as he possibly can, because he knows once he's out, he's probably going to get invited and he's going to be sitting behind bars. So he keeps this up, and the rest of the world says enough is enough. We got to turn our attention to Israel. And that's my fear. What do you think, Scott? You're kind of giving that serious look to that, because again, that's something that would concern me.
Well, look, you said that Israel's becoming a pariah state. Israel's a pariah state.
Right.
Israel's moving towards being more of a theocracy because Netanyahu had to join with the far-right Orthodox parties in order to put together his ruling coalition. Hopefully that changes and changes soon. Just like, the Republican Party joined up with the right-wing evangelicals here in the States. What they're trying to do here is moving us more towards a religious state. Everything from Dobbs to, prayer in school and, all the other stuff that you know about. Yeah. All of that is moving us towards the religion and the right, puts America in a bad spot. Again, I'll say this. There's a lot of shifting around in the world right now. And you're probably right about NATO. You're probably right that this is not going to be the same NATO that our fathers had, right? I agree with that. I do think that the problem gets solved when Trump leaves, but it's probably not. It's probably going to take a while. As for the rest of the world, what they used to call the non-aligned world, who's not on Russia's side, not on our side, the non-aligned world is becoming more and more powerful and more cohesive together. And they're going to have a say in things. And so whether it's Brazil or Argentina or India or Pakistan or China, there are alliances being formed that are not going to be our best friends anymore. And we're going to have to deal with that. And it's not going to be easy. You mentioned your worst fears about this. Mine is that we don't learn the lesson about getting away from oil. that there are so many good reasons to not depend on oil. And this is just another one of them. And we need renewable energy, and we need to double down on it, and we need to get back to where we were headed when Joe Biden was president, and we were going to change our power grid over and change cars and be a leader in the world at providing this technology, not just using it, because that's going to be a big benefit for us. And if that's all gone away because Trump is back in office, but it needs to get back.
I agree.
Oh, sorry. Back when Jimmy Carter was president, he had solar panels on the White House roof. So I think we need to get back to when Jimmy Carter was president. We would have, if we'd followed that trajectory, we would be a lot farther along than we are now. Of course, Reagan took them off as soon as he came in. Oh, it's morning in America, and drive as much as you want to, and Americans are entitled to drive, and no, we're not really, because the planet doesn't care. We are using water unsustainably. I mean, it's we need to be focusing on those issues, sustainability, and we've already forgotten, of course, the lessons of the forever wars and Vietnam and all that. Poof, gone. And since Trump is doing it, many people are just fine. As we said many times, critical thinking. So thank you, Laura, again. Thank you both.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening!